It all started when my fiancée took her best friend's advice and suddenly told me, "I just want to live a month away from you to be sure I marry you for love, not just habit." The shock was instant. What followed was a punch to the gut. Her friend, Mindy, actively started pursuing me, and somehow, we ended up dating. Now my ex-fiancée is back, completely frantic. I'm 28, and honestly, the last month has left me spinning, totally confused. My ex-girlfriend, Julia, who's 29, is convinced that Mindy, my current 28-year-old girlfriend, is a master manipulator who single-handedly torpedoed our 4-year relationship. Julia and I had 4 wonderful, loving years together. We connected through mutual friends and instantly clicked over our passion for running and the outdoors. Our lives were so intertwined, our lifestyles so similar, and we supported each other through everything. We've been living together for 3 years, and we're seriously talking about a summer wedding. I thought we were solid. Everything felt great. I was already planning to propose to her over the holidays. Then, around September, things shifted. I started noticing these changes in Julia's behavior. She was distant. She seemed stressed, carrying a visible weight I couldn't understand. I trusted her completely and couldn't fathom her cheating, but she started withdrawing, spending more and more time alone. Right around then, Mindy, Julia's friend from work, sent me a private message. She wanted to meet me in secret because she had something heavy to tell me about Julia. I'd known Mindy since I started dating Julia, so I was surprised, but in my gut, I immediately feared the absolute worst. I met Mindy at a coffee shop after work. She started by asking if Julia and I were okay. Then she dropped the bombshell. Julia had confided in her that she was planning to leave me soon. I was in total shock. I felt the blood drain from my face. I asked if there was another guy, but Mindy assured me no, saying Julia had just told her she was unsure about marrying me. Mindy claimed she was only telling me so I wouldn't be completely blindsided. I was devastated. I threw myself into trying to fix things, trying harder than ever to make our relationship exciting again, planning more dates, anything. Mindy kept helping me, feeding me more information about what Julia was supposedly saying. Finally, just before Thanksgiving, Julia told me she loved me, but she needed a month-long break to live alone. She said she just wanted a month of solitude to confirm she wanted to marry me. My heart shattered. I asked her again about someone else, and she denied it. But then, confusingly, warned me not to do anything stupid. She swore she loved me deeply, but needed to be a way to make sure she was choosing me for love, not just because of routine. I didn't get it at all. I told her that if 4 years wasn't enough time to be sure, maybe we should just end things for good. We had a horrible fight, and we broke up. Since our lease was ending soon, we agreed to separate in December. She found a new apartment, and I stayed in our old place, taking her name off the contract. The apartment felt so empty after she left. I was so lonely. I wasn't used to being alone. Determined not to drown in sadness, I decided to invite a bunch of friends over for a New Year's party. Mindy was on the guest list, too. It was a good night. My friends worked hard to cheer me up. Mindy socialized easily with everyone. When the party wound down, Mindy stayed behind to help me clean up. That night, we slept together. I felt a pang of guilt, but honestly, Mindy's presence was a genuine comfort. Since then, we've been together almost every day at my house. I still grieve the loss of Julia, but I can't lie. Being with Mindy makes me happy. She's sweet, she's affectionate, and she's here. Last Sunday, we woke up to a loud knock on the door. I went to open it, and there was Julia. She was absolutely furious, immediately starting to yell. She accused me of being unfaithful, but I fired back that I absolutely had not cheated, and she was the one who ended things. Mindy was also in the apartment, and Julia was spitting mad at both of us. She launched into Mindy, calling her manipulative and revealing that it was Mindy who suggested she take time away, supposedly, so I would understand Julia's true feelings. I managed to calm Julia down enough to ask her to explain herself. She revealed that after we started discussing marriage, she'd told Mindy about it, and Mindy had constantly questioned her certainty. Mindy suggested she take time alone to figure out her true feelings, promising I'd be understanding and give her space. When Julia resisted, Mindy convinced her I was so controlling I wouldn't even give her 1 month alone, pushing her to break up with me instead. Mindy immediately denied it, claiming those were Julia's own ideas, and she was merely present during those conversations. But then Mindy admitted she had told me a few things, just so I would have a chance to try and fix things over the last few months. That admission enraged Julia even more, and she started accusing me of emotional infidelity. Julia said the last few weeks made her realize we were soulmates, meant to be together, but now she couldn't believe I'd moved on from a 4-year relationship in 1 week. Part of me wants desperately to believe Julia, but she broke up with me, and it wasn't my fault. Mindy was there for me when I was a mess, but now, I'm doubting her intentions, too. She suddenly started talking to me, someone she was never close to, and immediately became my rock after the breakup, even though she was Julia's close friend. Am I really guilty of emotional infidelity toward Julia? Should I have told her about Mindy's private messages? Maybe I shouldn't have jumped into something so quickly. Even though Julia dumped me, I was just wounded, and Mindy was right there to pick up the pieces. I desperately need an unbiased view on this whole mess. Comments. Fancy T. Look, how do you find out if Julia is telling the truth? Maybe she's just mad you bounced back too fast. This is simple, man. Talk to Julia. For years, a proposal planned. You know her well enough to spot a lie. Hear her out, and follow your gut feeling. Even if you decide against reconciling, take a break from Mindy immediately. You rebounded way too fast. A week after a 4-year relationship ends, and you're already in bed with someone else? Seriously, take the time you need to grieve. Focus on yourself. There is absolutely no need to rush anything. Vegetable Trainer 23. It's alarming how easily the two of you broke up because of Mindy's strategic whispering. Mindy is the core problem here. The timing, the raw sincerity of Julia's reaction, and the way Mindy's influence on you perfectly mirrors what Julia described about Mindy's influence on her. It's all too damn suspicious. Mindy sounds like a manipulative, obsessive stalker type. And just so you know, you're right. You clearly feel much more for Julia than you ever will for Mindy. That should tell you everything you need to know, brother. It sounds like you and Julia need a private, honest conversation about what Mindy told each of you. Everyone is saying it. This is far too convenient. Mindy was actively planting things in both your heads, telling you exactly what she needed you to hear to make this whole thing happen. Reach out to Julia. Ask to meet her alone. Even if you don't get back together, you two care deeply for each other, and she wouldn't want you ending up with someone who is clearly manipulating both of you. Mindy's manipulation of you is direct, but Julia is also a victim in this tragedy. You aren't wrong. If Julia is right, I just threw a 4-year relationship away in 2 weeks flat. How on earth could you ever trust Mindy? She literally decimated your relationship with Julia just so she could possess you. This wasn't about love or even genuine liking. It was pure envy toward Julia. She was so envious of what Julia had with you that she systematically sabotaged your relationship. And the moment Julia stepped away to sort out her feelings, Mindy swooped in and manipulated you into sleeping with her. Dude, you need to get that girl out of your house right now. Even if you don't reconcile with Julia, Mindy will always be a puppet master in your life and the lives of those around you. Mindy is someone who derives sick pleasure from hurting people to get her way. She was such a good friend to you that she destroyed your life with Julia. Let me be clear. When my friends confide in me about their fears, I take that to the grave, and I expect the same from them. You do not, under any circumstances, go have private chats with your friend's partner about their relationship struggles. That is truly twisted. That's emotional manipulation in its purest form. That girl knew exactly what she was doing and played you like a finely tuned instrument. Mindy has to go. Send her a concise message telling her it's over, and tell her that if she contacts you again, you will file for a restraining order for harassment. Block her everywhere. You might be able to salvage things with Julia, but it will take intensive couples therapy. Look into it immediately, and try to convince Julia to go with you. I can't promise you'll rebuild the relationship, but I know for a fact Mindy will eventually destroy you in the same way she destroyed Julia, because to her, it was all about possession and envy, not a real relationship. Update 1. I, 28, male, posted last week about my girlfriend, Julia, 29, female, accusing her friend and coworker, Mindy, 28, female, of actively sabotaging our relationship. Julia had ended our 4-year relationship in December, and Mindy reached out to me during my lowest point. However, when Julia found out Mindy was talking to me, she confronted both of us on Sunday morning, tearfully explaining that Mindy had manipulated her into breaking up with me. The worst, most regrettable part was that I was completely numb after the breakup and ended up sleeping with Mindy after a New Year's party. After that confrontation, I told Mindy I needed space and haven't seen her since. I posted the original story on Reddit, and about 3,000 people piled on, calling me an idiot. I apologize for the length of my posts, but I want to defend us. We weren't idiots for not seeing it. You all read a summarized version in 5 minutes. We lived that slow-motion nightmare for 7 months. Since then, I have been messaging Julia every single day, just trying to get her to talk to me. I was terrified she had blocked me, that I'd lost her forever. Mindy kept sending messages, too, begging to meet and talk this through. On Wednesday, the day after I posted, I finally messaged Mindy. I demanded she tell me the complete truth about everything she'd told Julia. I warned her that if I found out she was lying, I'd confront her without hesitation. Mindy tried to insist on meeting in person or talking on the phone, but I wanted it all in writing. She messaged back, claiming Julia had always spoken highly of me. She said when Julia mentioned our 2024 wedding plans, she was genuinely happy for us. But then, Mindy claimed Julia started confessing her doubts, saying she was unsure about marrying me because of the issues she saw in her parents' marriage. Mindy said one day, Julia told her she wanted a break because she needed to be sure of her feelings. Mindy claimed that was when she first alerted me to Julia's behavior, because she felt terrible for me since we had already told our families about the engagement. She said after our fight, Julia was furious and told her she'd never marry me. Mindy insisted the only reason Julia came back was because she discovered I was moving on and was jealous of us. She finished by saying I was a great guy and hoped I'd realize that what we had was something special. I simply replied that I understood and needed time. I continued messaging Julia once a day, just hoping for a conversation. It was gut-wrenching, thinking she might have blocked me, that I might never hear her voice again. Then, on Friday afternoon, Julia finally replied. She said she wanted to see me and would come to our apartment on Saturday afternoon. I cleaned the place meticulously, sick with guilt over what I was about to face. When she arrived, she looked heartbroken, like a shadow of the woman I knew. I sat on our couch, but she purposefully chose a seat far away from me. We exchanged strained pleasantries, asking how the other was doing, but it was painfully obvious neither of us was okay. I started to apologize, but she held up a hand and stopped me. She asked me to let her finish and not to interrupt. She had brought a small notebook, pages filled with things she needed to say. She started by telling me she loved me deeply, but that once we started talking seriously about marriage, the next big step terrified her. She thought those feelings were normal and would just pass, so she made the huge mistake of not telling me her concerns. Instead, she talked to Mindy about it. She said she wanted to tell me everything now, straight from her, so I wouldn't get any more distorted, secondhand information about her distance or the breakup. She explained that her parents' marriage was defined by conflict. They stayed together until her mother died in 2021 during the pandemic, but they fought constantly, and Julia always believed her mother didn't truly love her father. But her mother was utterly dependent on him for everything, and her father knew it, which allowed him to treat her badly. Julia swore she would never end up like her mother after marriage. However, as we lived together, she started seeing hints of those same issues in our own relationship. For example, when we first met, Julia had massive credit card debt and was terrible with money. I helped her fix that. Now, even though our finances were separate, I ended up managing all her money, investments, everything, at her request, to the point where she didn't even know or understand where her money was kept. She also mentioned that we always loved cooking great dinners together, but if I worked late, she would completely lose the motivation to cook and would resort to eating cheese and crackers like a small child for dinner. She also pointed out that for 4 years, I've never told her no to anything she wanted to buy. She felt I spoiled her too much, and she'd become accustomed to the luxuries and the security my income offered. She talked about these feelings with Mindy, and initially, Mindy just listened, but around September, she brought up a cousin who had the same problem. This cousin took a month away from her fiancé, and within a week, she realized how much she missed him and never had doubts again. Julia said when she asked for the break, she just wanted to live with her best friend for a few weeks to see if she was becoming too dependent on me. She knew I was planning to propose during our Christmas trip to my parents' house. When I told her she couldn't take a break, she panicked and broke up with me, terrified of getting engaged without being certain we wouldn't become her parents. After she finished, she looked up and asked when I started seeing Mindy and how many times we'd met. I pulled up my chat history with Mindy and passed her my phone. I told her I had only seen Mindy that one time in September when she told me Julia was unhappy and wanted to break up. I explained I'd already noticed Julia was distant, and the only answer I ever got was, "I am fine. We are fine." Fueled by my own deep insecurities, I tried to cling to Julia tighter. When she asked for the break and to get away for a few weeks, I assumed it was the final step before the breakup, which led me to panic, fight with her, and ultimately break up and have her move out. At that point, Julia's voice started to crack. She then asked when Mindy contacted me after the breakup. I showed her the messages. Initially, Mindy just sent memes to cheer me up, and I'd reply with a thank you or a thumbs up. But the messages became more frequent. She offered to talk if I needed support. She asked about my holiday plans, and when I told her I was inviting friends for New Year's, she mentioned she had no plans. So, I invited her. Julia stopped me there. She said she didn't need to hear the painful details. Then, she explained that when she moved out after our fight, she thought she simply wasn't ready to marry me. She stayed with her friend for 2 weeks, then got her own apartment in January. She was miserable. She missed me desperately. This became crystal clear when she moved into the new place alone and couldn't bear to stay there even one night. Her best friend is still staying with her. Within a week of living there, she knew she couldn't live without me. When she asked one of our mutual friends how I was doing last Saturday, they told her about the New Year's party and that Mindy had been there. It made no sense to her why Mindy would be at my party. She jumped to the conclusion that Mindy and I were having an affair during our relationship, and that this was the real reason Mindy had constantly tried to break us up, telling her not to get married if she had doubts. When she saw Mindy in our apartment on Sunday, she completely fell apart. But when she discovered Mindy was also talking to me, telling me the opposite of what she told Julia, she realized how utterly foolish she had been to throw everything away without talking to me first. Despite the profound pain of seeing me with Mindy, she realized she couldn't stand the thought of losing me. She kept calling herself an idiot and apologizing for not opening up to me sooner. I moved closer to her and tried to hug her, but she moved away, needing a moment. She finally asked if I was still willing to be with her, and I told her I would do absolutely anything to win her back. She said she was willing to put the last month behind us, too. but she had conditions. First, I had to cut Mindy out completely. Block her everywhere, never contact her again. If I saw her, I was to act like she was invisible. I agreed without a second thought. Second, she had already signed up for individual therapy and was on a waiting list. She insisted we do couples therapy together to address all the concerns we both had and overcome them as a team. We also agreed to hold off on any engagement or wedding plans until we started therapy. I agreed to that, too. Finally, she wanted me to forget the last month entirely, treating it like a terrible nightmare we never spoke of again. She warned that if I ever made a single joke about us being on a break, she would punch me in the face. This was the first moment we both genuinely smiled. I asked what she planned to do about Mindy since they worked together. She said the ultimate punishment for Mindy would be knowing she failed to separate us. Julia wants Mindy to see how happy she is with me, to be present when she finally shows off her engagement ring at the office, and to be forced to watch us get married, consumed by jealousy. We hugged, and the relief that washed over me was immense. I finally had a chance to make things right. I asked her to stay, and she said yes. The rest of the night was perfect. We ordered Dorta. We cuddled on the couch and watched reruns of Top Chat. The next morning, we talked about moving in together again. I wanted her back in our old apartment, but she wanted a completely fresh start and asked if I would move into her new place. It's smaller than ours, and honestly, not in the greatest neighborhood, but we'll talk about it more and decide. I also have the headache of figuring out how to break one of our 2 new 12-month leases. I'm writing this post now while Julia is at her apartment picking up a few things for the week. I truly feel incredibly lucky not to have lost Julia, despite my awful behavior over the last month. I just hope we can work through everything and get married soon, seeing this entire incident as nothing more than a small, regrettable stumble in our otherwise perfect relationship. Also, I still don't know how to address her feeling that my personality, that I spoil her too much, is making her too dependent on me. It's just who I am, and I know I need to work on it in couples therapy. But any immediate advice on making her feel less dependent would be so welcome. Update 2. Thank you so much to everyone who reached out with concerns for my mental health through direct messages, sending me helpline numbers. Don't worry, I'm a marathon runner, and I don't give up that easily. After the confrontation, Julia agreed to get back together and try to forget everything, but I could still see the deep hurt from my actions. I actively tried not to love bomb her, giving her the space she initially needed, which, ironically, was the core reason we broke up in the first place. That week, Julia had a nervous breakdown and a severe panic attack after seeing Mindy with me in the apartment. She found an online therapist, whom she still sees weekly. We also searched for couples counseling and managed to get in almost a month after the incident. We kept our wedding plans on hold until then. I could tell Julia was making a monumental effort to act normal, but something was fundamentally broken. I was hopeful for us, but seeing her suffer because of my choices was crushing. During our first couples therapy session, we both finally opened up about the relationship and what happened. Julia tearfully apologized for her failure to communicate what was in her heart, for how badly she felt for dragging me through all that drama. She confessed she didn't know how to process her feelings and just panicked, desperate not to unload her negativity onto me. I immediately apologized for everything on my side. We ended up in a heartbreaking competition to see who could shoulder more of the blame for the incident. There were a lot of tears, but the experience was incredibly healing. The counselor told us he could see the depth of our love and advised us to start taking small, intentional steps toward communicating everything on our minds. He gave us specific exercises to work on at home, prompting us to discuss certain topics. By the time we walked out of his office, I knew, without a single doubt, that I wanted to spend my life with Julia. I told her so, and she said she couldn't imagine a life without me, either. We decided to move forward with our wedding plans. Mindy tried desperately to contact me many times. She sent messages, but Julia had already blocked her from my phone and all social media. Mindy then went after Julia, sending her some nasty messages. The absolute worst part was 15 days after the incident when Mindy started posting pictures of us together on Instagram every day. Some of those photos were intimate, not nudes, but definitely personal, and they caused Julia immense pain. Julia reported her to Human Resources and was able to secure a transfer and a promotion to a different department after a month. The very last I heard from Mindy was a long email she sent to my work email, but I deleted it without even reading a word. The photos Mindy posted created a huge amount of drama, forcing us to explain the whole ridiculous story to our parents and friends. As you can probably guess, I was unanimously voted Idiot of the Year. I'm pretty sure my sister will give me a run for my money before the year is out, though. The entire Mindy issue thankfully only lasted a month, and we never heard from her again. We just moved on with our lives. Julia has been diligently working with her therapist on her emotional dependency issues and concerns. The therapist believes it stems from a childhood trauma and was heavily amplified after her mother's sudden death. I've tried to get Julia interested in our finances slowly, but she breaks out in a figurative rash whenever we talk about money and immediately changes the subject. I managed to break Julia's apartment lease by paying a penalty, and we stayed in our old place for a while. However, Julia eventually wanted to move out as soon as possible because of the bad memories tied to it. We bought a beautiful single-family home a few months ago in a good suburb and moved there in May. I don't think the emotional dependency is fully resolved. In fact, it might have gotten worse after the incident, but I love her, and I will always be there for her whenever she needs me. Final update. Julia and I got married last Saturday in a beautiful, intimate ceremony at my father's country club. All our family and friends were there, and I couldn't have asked for a more perfect night. I truly wish I could share pictures of Julia in her wedding dress. She looked absolutely breathtaking. We're going on our honeymoon next week, and I couldn't be happier with how everything turned out. I hope that in 25 years, Julia and I will look back on this whole mess as nothing more than a tiny, ridiculous stumble in our perfect life together. After learning that her best friend was actively trying to destroy her most significant relationship for personal gain, can Julia ever truly trust her own judgment regarding who she lets into her life again? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments.